Once upon a time in the rolling hills of France, nestled among ancient oaks and shimmering fields of gold, stood the grand Lafourcade Palace, a vision of opulence and grace. Its tall, arched windows mirrored the sky's azure, and its cobblestone courtyard echoed with the sound of carriages. Inside, the lights of crystal chandeliers never dimmed, for the palace was a beacon of celebration, its halls filled with the whispers of French nobility. And it was within these lavish walls that Victorine Lafourcade, the young beauty of the Lafourcade household, lived her charmed life. Victorine was the envy of all who knew her, radiant, poised, and impossibly graceful. Though gifted with the wealth and status of her family's noble lineage, it was her allure that drew every eye. Her presence commanded rooms, her laughter sparkled as brightly as her jewels. Suitors flocked to every soirée held in the palace, hoping for nothing more than a moment of her favor. Yet none more fervently than a dashing young man named Julien Bossuet. Julien was a man of lively wit and effortless charm. Though poor in wealth, he was rich in spirit and admired by all for his amicable nature. His voice, smooth as velvet, could stir hearts in even the dullest of crowds. It was at one of the palace's grand masquerade balls that Julien first laid eyes on Victorine, and his heart was never the same. She in turn found Julien amusing and undeniably charming. The two shared prolonged conversations in the glow of the ballroom lights, whispers among the champagne glasses, and she admired his ability to make her laugh like no other could. For weeks after their meeting, Julien's infatuation deepened. Seeing no point in delay, and being a man always true to his passions, he confessed his love to Victorine and proposed marriage. But Victorine, enamored still with the trappings of luxury and the expectations of her noble family, turned him down. Her gentle rejection throbbed with the subtle cruelty of high society, soft yet irrevocable. She chose instead Renelle de Vauclin, a wealthy heir from a family even more prominent than her own. His pedigree dazzled her parents, his fortune spoke louder than words, and the union was sealed with golden rings and empty smiles. Victorine soon realized, however, that she had made a grave error. While Renelle embodied status and affluence, beneath his polished veneer was a man cold and ruthless. Renelle was cruel. His words cutting as winter winds, his temper a violent storm. He left her shattered, her days filled with tears and bruised silences. The gilded cage of her palace became a prison of despair. So heavy was her grief that her health failed her completely, leaving her bedridden, as pale as the ghost of her former joy. When her fragile body finally gave in, Victorine was presumed dead. The Lafourcade family buried their daughter in the modest cemetery of the village where she was born. Her grave, though humble, was adorned with flowers, as the memory of her beauty lingered in the hearts of many. It seemed a tragic ending for a woman once admired for her vitality and radiance. But tragedy took an unexpected turn. Word of her death reached Julien Bossuet. The news struck him like a thunderbolt, igniting a fire of longing and despair. Unable to let her memory rest as others had, Julien sought closure in the most peculiar of ways. One moonless night, he made his way to the cemetery, driven by a haunting need to hold on to some piece of her. With trembling hands, he planned to collect a simple memento, a lock of her hair. By the dim light of his lantern, Julien unsealed the grave and gently opened the coffin. There lay Victorine, her beauty preserved in unnatural stillness. Yet as his hands reached for her golden locks, a tremor ran through her body. Her eyes fluttered open, and her lips quivered as though awakening from a long dream. Julien stumbled backward in shock, but his heart, aching with love, overcame his fear. Gathering his composure, he lifted her fragile body into his arms and carried her from the grave, swearing to protect her from whatever fate had wronged her. Victorine, alive but weak, had been buried prematurely, declared dead in error. Julien, steadfast and resourceful, nursed her back to health over the following weeks in secret, to keep her safe from the prying eyes of anyone who might question her resurrection, or worse, return her to Renelle. Julien returned to the cemetery to seal the coffin once again, leaving the world to believe the young Lafourcade beauty had been lost forever. In Julien's humble home, far from the lavish halls of the Lafourcade palace, Victorine recovered, her strength and spirit slowly returning. During this time, their connection deepened beyond the bounds of their earlier flirtations. No longer was she the dazzling girl of society who had dazzled Julien at those extravagant parties. Now she was a woman humbled by hardship, awakened to the true depths of love by his kindness and unwavering devotion. Together, the pair concocted a plan to leave France behind and start anew in America, far from the reach of society's judgments and the shadow of Renelle. They sailed together, hand in hand, to a land of unknowns where the promise of freedom and a fresh beginning awaited. For 20 years, Victorine and Julien built a life of love and contentment across the Atlantic. But as time passed, nostalgia pulled at their hearts. They decided to return briefly to Paris, to rekindle memories of their homeland, and bask in the familiarity of its elegance. They agreed to attend a grand ball, curious as to how much the old world had changed. Little did they know, the past had not yet let them go. Their return to Paris was not merely a journey of nostalgia, but a confrontation with the echoes of a time they thought had been left behind. It was at this glittering soiree that Victorine's heart froze. Across the marble ballroom, among the swirling figures in elaborate gowns and powdered wigs, stood Renelle, tall, severe, and as sharp-eyed as ever. His gaze locked onto her, and a shadow of recognition passed across his face. Slowly, he slipped through the crowd toward her. Victorine stared, icy dread creeping over her. She had no doubt he would remember, and she was right.
"You look," Renelle said as his eyes narrowed, "an awful lot like someone I once knew."
Victorine felt her breath catch as she tried to mask her fear. His eyes dropped to her left. Renelle's eyes narrowed, his mind racing to place the familiar face before him. Victorine's heart pounded in her chest, each beat a reminder of the danger that loomed. His voice, though calm, was laced with an edge that cut through the chatter of the ballroom. Victorine's mind raced for an escape, her smile a fragile mask against the storm of emotions within. In that moment, the past threatened to unravel the life Victorine had fought to rebuild, each second stretching into eternity.